Okay, so when you hear the word Scandinavia, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? Honestly, it's probably one of two wildly different things. Maybe you picture these pristine, ultra-modern data centers humming quietly, powering the entire internet. Or maybe you picture something completely opposite. Bloodthirsty Viking raiders just charging straight out of the mist. Well, in this explainer, we're going to bridge that massive and seemingly impossible gap. We are going to trace this wild journey from the muddy, chaotic, ancient battlefields of Northern Europe right up to the absolute cutting edge of our modern digital world. It's a story of just mind-blowing contrasts. And honestly, it really forces us to completely rethink how civilizations, actually transform and reinvent their own cultural DNA over time. Let's dive in.
To really get a grip on this transformation, we actually have to rewind all the way to the beginning. I want you to just try and imagine it for a second. Put yourself right there in the moment. You're standing on a freezing beach in Normandy over 1,000 years ago. What was it actually like when those incredibly strong men, the guys we now call Vikings, first stepped to shore? Picture the scene. It's intense, it's rugged. You've got these absolute forces of nature jumping out of these massive, terrifying wooden ships. You can almost feel the biting wind, hear the wood splintering against the sand, and sense the sheer, paralyzing terror they must have caused for the locals. These weren't just explorers out for a stroll. They were bringing absolute chaos and brute force directly to the shores of Europe. That heavy, terrifying legacy, it's literally burned into our collective history.
But fast forward to today, right? And it is completely fascinating to see how that terrifying legacy has morphed into, well, this weird kind of social currency. Think about it. If you're hanging out at a coffee shop or mingling at a party today, finding out someone has Viking heritage doesn't make you run for the hills. It's actually a massive conversation starter. It's almost like this cool badge of honor. That person across the room making eye contact, they might actually be hoping you'll drop some trivia about your fierce Viking ancestors. We have totally romanticized this era. We took that brutal reality of warriors storming beaches and turned it into this modern vibe where being related to conquerors is seen as like a huge flex. The legend is alive and well in pop culture for sure, but the day-to-day reality of how those guys actually lived, yeah, it was a lot less glamorous than a flirty chat at a party.
Because when we strip away all the slick Hollywood myths, the actual historical reality of their civilization was rough. Really, really rough. Back then, living in Scandinavia meant dealing with a deeply gritty, smoky, and honestly exhausting day-to-day existence. They were packed into these huge, long cabins, using big town cabins for communal eating and just trying to survive. Imagine being stuck inside one of those rustic wooden structures for months on end during a completely brutal Nordic winter. You're closed in by these thick, heavy wood walls, and your only source of heat, and light for that matter, is the warm but totally blinding smoke pouring out of these crude stone chimneys. There was no escaping the soot. It was this rugged environment where every single day was literally a battle against the elements, totally tied to the physical earth and fire.
And look, when you're roughing it in that kind of elemental environment, modern comforts just aren't a thing. For all that hyper-masculine, unstoppable warrior posturing we associate with Vikings, their actual hygiene habits are kind of hilarious by today's standards. Are you ready for this? These fierce conquerors, the absolute terrors of Europe, took a bath, maybe 2 or 3 times an entire year. Yep, 2 or 3 times a year. Just let that sink in for a second. You've got the smoky, soot-filled cabins, the constant, grueling physical exertion of battling and surviving, and you're only getting a bath when the seasons change? It paints a very specific and actually a pretty pungent picture of the past, doesn't it? It just goes to show what a stark contrast there was between their godlike legendary status and their extremely unwashed daily reality.
So how did they get from that to where they are now? Well, obviously, this massive cultural leap from unwashed warriors to super-modern innovators didn't just happen overnight. It was a slow, monumental transformation. A really huge turning point happened when the region started adopting Christianity in the Middle Ages. And this wasn't just, a simple swap in religious beliefs. It actually totally rewired their entire societal framework. It pulled them away from that decentralized raider lifestyle and started laying the groundwork, brick by slow brick, for the highly structured, cooperative society we see today. Fast forward through centuries of building up institutions and totally shifting their values, and Scandinavia has practically leaped into the future. They didn't just adapt to the modern world, they helped build the thing. They've emerged as this hyper-advanced society, leading the whole globe in innovation.
Seriously, just think about the sheer scale of that evolution. It's got to be one of the most remarkable transformations in human history. On one end of the spectrum, you have a society literally defined by mud, smoke, wooden longhouses, and getting in a bath twice a year. It was all about raw physical power and just getting through the winter. And then, flip to the other end, today's reality, a highly advanced, hyper-clean technological powerhouse. The very same society that used to be famous for raw, unfiltered chaos is now known globally for being incredibly pristine and meticulously organized. It's a complete 180, a total inversion of where their culture started.
And we're not just talking about shiny new buildings and spotless streets here. The real proof is in the actual data, specifically in their digital world. Get this. Today, Scandinavia runs computer systems and data centers that are some of the most energy efficient on the entire planet. But here's my favorite part, the real irony of it all. For a culture that directly descends from history's most infamous invaders and pillagers, their modern digital networks actually have some of the absolute lowest rates of computer viruses and cyber intrusions in the world. Isn't that wild? They literally traded the chaotic, rugged life of raiders for the ultimate secure digital order. They swapped out those smoky stone chimneys for perfectly cooled server racks and brute force for highly optimized, totally clean algorithms.
So it brings us to this one massive question. How in the world does a civilization of infrequently bathed warriors, huddled around smoky fires, evolve to become the literal architect of the world's most pristine, energy-efficient digital environments? It is a monumental leap, and honestly, it just goes to show how drastically a civilization can reinvent its very core over the centuries. It really makes you stop and think. If a culture can completely rewrite its DNA from chaotic ancient battlefields to absolute digital perfection, what exactly is our own society going to look like 1,000 years from now?